Hello, guys. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back once again to my podcast of Inspiring Stories. This is your host, Mevish here. I am so excited. I am so excited for today's guest. Guys, she is a Muslim and she has a phenomenal story to share with us. I cannot wait to bring her on board and let her tell you her journey. She was on my podcast last year around the same time and she shared her story. We just connected a few days ago, and I think that her story needs to be heard by everyone. Today is going to be a very different kind of story. I'm super excited. Let's bring my guest on board and let's start our conversation for tonight. She is already in the house. Alrighty. And I'm gonna send her the request. Just give me a few moments, guys. We're just connecting. Once we are, oh, there she is. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. How are you?
I am super excited to have you. So I am doing great. Before we dive in and start talking like it's just you and me here, a brief introduction about your name, where you're from, what you do, and then we'll start off from there.
All right. So my name is Fariha. I grew up in Houston, Texas. And now I am living in South Carolina. And I'm still a student. I'm working to get my psychology degree and also do this year I did some teaching. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of figuring things out. But that's just a little bit about me.
All righty. So for here, I was just sharing that you were on my podcast last year. I think it was around the same time, summer.
Yes.
Uh, and you came forward and you shared your story about emotional abuse. Let's dive in and have that conversation. So tell me, uh, when was that? When did this happen? And how did you start to find out that something was wrong in your marriage?
So I got married 2016. I was 22 years old at the
Okay.
and I was in the middle of school, um, but it kind of happened as typical marriages happen in our community. There's the parents look for someone, and they let us talk, but not, it wasn't communication that happened often. But
Hmm.
once in a while, we would get to talk and I would get to know a little bit about this person. We asked each other questions, things like that, and then I got married in August 2016.
So
And
how long? So how long were you guys talking? Number one,
mhm.
and number two, before you got married. I just want to ask that, so you just answered in the sequence. Did you have to leave your school to get married? Your college, I mean.
So no, that wasn't in the plan, but it ended up happening. I did
Okay.
leaving school, but it wasn't in the original plan. I was going to
Okay.
studies and everything. But
Right.
the other question was, how long did we talk? Not very long. I believe I got introduced around May, and by August I was married. So, yeah, not a lot of
Man. So you had
time,
a
but
few months.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, a
So
couple of.
so so how was that in those few months talking to him? Did you see some red flags or were things good? Did he mask it well for you?
There were definitely red flags, but I think I didn't realize them at the time. I was very naive, um,
Mm.
and I think my focus was on, okay, I didn't really see much about the actions, but I saw more about the words. They were telling me a lot of things that sounded nice, but in reality, back,
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
no problem. No problem. So there were red flags, but I was very young, didn't know how to catch on to them at that time.
Mm,
So now I can see the red flags, but
mm.
at that time I really didn't see. Or I tried to be easygoing, oh, that's okay, you kind of try to um, make excuses for people. So,
Yes, absolutely. So then you got married, and how were the initial stages of your marriage?
um, right beginning, there were problems. Um, and the same thing, like in terms of my personality, the thing with people who are abusive, they usually target people who are very like, easygoing, very forgiving, very that's the kind of people that they want to be in a relationship with because they
Mm.
do a lot. Um, even though there were part I was like,
I lost your voice. I lost your voice.
how can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can hear you now.
So, um, the emotional abuse, I would say it took some conditioning. So in the beginning, they love bomb.
Mm,
There's a lot of
mm,
um, words that
yes.
sound wonderful, all the nice things that you want to hear, and then but in terms of actions, there were things that were big red flags in the beginning. Like,
Could you name a few?
yeah, just I think in terms of there was like an establishment of control already. Like from the very,
Mm,
as soon as you're my wife, you have to
mm,
listen to me. So it's like
mm,
even the way the person would call me is like if I'm talking to someone, they call me, that's it. I have to drop the conversation and go. Like things
mm.
like it's a control being established from the beginning.
And did you find that behavior odd, or you just went with the flow? Because I know you and I belonging to the same background
Mhm.
culturally. Did you think, oh no, this is the normal way, this is the way we're supposed to be as wives, and you just went on with it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's why I say like when I was at that age, I can also see my mistakes and my flaws that I thought that's the way I should be. I
Hmm.
this is gonna make me a good wife, So I
Right.
like I was eager to please people.
Mm. Right.
So yeah, definitely I
Yeah. Yes, yes. Fariha, could you just set your mic, because sometimes your voice just kind of goes away. So I just want to make sure the audience get the most of what you're saying.
okay. Maybe I
And
should
and and that is so true what you're saying, because I think belonging from the same cultural background, we are brought up like being the girl or being the female, that we have to be submissive actually.
right, right,
And if we're not submissive, we're considered bad, we're considered like we won't be able to keep a home together and stuff like that. So there's this mindset that from a very young age, girls are supposed, they're actually conditioned, that don't talk loudly, talk softly,
yeah,
don't do that, you're a girl, and you're always checked on, and that kind of takes away your authenticity, right?
oh yeah,
And and and, and then you start to believe that being your true self is not going to help you in the real world, because you would be rejected. uh,
right,
so we already from a very young age start to learn that being our real self is not the way. We have to mold ourselves and fit to
yeah,
everybody's
right,
way of living, and that's the
right.
way we will survive, and that's the way we'll be applauded, and
Oh yeah,
everybody would love us,
yeah,
right?
yeah. That I think that's a huge thing. Is like everyone will love me if I am that submissive person, or I'm going. I think that's something that I can relate to. That I really deeply was just I wanted people's love. I wanted people
Mm,
to like just like me,
mm,
and the I thought the way to do that, the way to get that is obedience. You know, oh, the
Mm.
obedient daughter, the obedient wife. She's the one that, oh, the parents love an obedient child, right? So,
Right.
and
Mm.
then the husband's gonna love an obedient wife. But then I got to a point where I was listening to someone, I was being obedient to someone who was using that against me, like, you know, using that to abuse me. And I didn't even
Yes.
know how to get out of it because I had been conditioned to
Should.
just
Mm.
listen. So when people say, well, why didn't you just do something different? Or, you know, why didn't you just not do that? It's like,
Mm.
it wasn't in my nature even to question. If someone said, do
Right.
this, I was like, okay, you know.
Right. Absolutely. I can totally relate. And it's sad. I was actually talking to someone yesterday also, and we were discussing the same thing. It's sad because when you reach out to people you love, like family, like friends,
Mm-hmm.
relatives, whoever, you reach out because you think that you're going to get the support and not the
Right,
judgment, but
right.
sadly you don't receive that. There is so much of judgment, there's so much of why you did, like you saying, why don't
Mm-hmm.
you try this, why did you do that,
Yeah,
why did you wait
yeah,
for that, that you start to question yourself, like, okay, now they're also reaffirming it, so maybe I am wrong, maybe there's something wrong with me, maybe I need
right.
to fix or get my act together if I want the marriage to work. So there's a lot of pressure because a lot of people are just not ready to listen, and especially I think for you and me, I think we both can say that belonging to Muslim families,
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot of setback and a lot of pressure because, oh my goodness, when you reach out for support, everybody becomes so like nervous, like,
Yes,
oh,
yeah.
she's, oh, what if she wants a divorce,
Mm-hmm.
what if this happens,
Mm-hmm.
and you get that energy, and
Right.
you, it takes you really long and a lot of courage to reach out in the first place and say, hey,
Yeah.
I have a problem here, could you listen, because you know
Yeah.
that you already know that uh, getting a divorce is not going to be something acceptable
Right.
for even close family members.
Yeah.
Uh, Another question: the headscarf, was that
Mhm.
something out of choice, or was that something you had to just do?
The headscarf was something that was my choice because I was wearing it before I got married.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
but there were definitely um, issues with the headscarf as well when it came to my marriage. For example, um, they would also use that in a way. For example, I wear it in a way that I feel comfortable, you know,
Right. Right.
but sometimes a person can make you feel like you're not doing it well enough, or they will pinpoint, you know. And then I was told I should wear, you know, the face veil,
Okay.
and that's something, you know, if somebody does that from their own choice, I totally respect that. I admire that. But for me, I felt like I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And I think, for a couple of months, I wore the face veil.
Oh.
Um, but I felt like I was so invisible, and that's what this person wanted because I was not allowed to talk outside. Like, if I did talk, it was like I would always be nervous if this person was around me because,
Hmm.
like, anything I say, even if I'm at the cashier or something, like, it's like, well, why did you say it like that? You know your place, kind of thing. And
Hmm.
so it was like I felt like that was the niqab was like the veil was like kind of another step, another tool for him to use to kind of put me in the background or like to shun me, you know. And I wasn't doing it for my relationship with God, you know. I wasn't doing it to
Exactly.
please myself or like my spiritual life. It wasn't enhancing me in any way, you know.
Right. It was actually
So
shattering you and taking away your self-worth and your self-esteem because
yes,
he was making sure that he conveyed the message that you wear this, you're invisible, I don't want anybody to see you, and
right,
I'm in control, and every step of the way he made
right.
sure that you knew that he was in control,
Exactly,
right?
because I see, like, you know, my sister wears it. I have like my sister-in-laws, they wear it, and they're such like wonderful women who are very empowered. They speak up, you know. I see the way that they interact in the world and things like that. And for me, it was different. So I know that there are women who wear that from their own choice and they're very empowered to do it. And so I respect that. But when someone is forcing you or using it as a tool to like
Control you.
control you, then that's when it actually makes you go even further away from your spirituality. Like it makes you feel like claustrophobic, you know.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
So tell me, in these moments, how were you feeling when you were being abused like that? When you were being controlled, like what were you feeling? Were you feeling that something is wrong, or were you just too nervous and too scared to think anything beyond just being a submissive wife?
I was definitely like feeling that there's something wrong, but I was also nervous to like do anything about it because I remember sometimes I would read, you know, little things, or sometimes, you know, we would go to little talks where they would talk about marriage and stuff, and all the things that were like negative about a marriage, I was like, oh no, this is clicking
Mm,
with me, and it made me scared to a point where I almost wanted to be in denial. Um, because I knew that it was so bad that
mm,
something would have to be done, you know.
mm,
And I got into a very bad state of depression, actually, especially, you know, after the marriage. I thought, oh, it will just take time. You know, everyone says the beginning is hard and things like that.
mm,
And so I thought eventually we'll settle in and things will get better. But it kept getting worse. And emotionally, I was totally, totally not myself. Like, I was severely depressed. And I wouldn't be able to get up in the morning. Like, you know, if I was home alone, and I was home alone a lot, um, like, you know, just to get up and start your day for yourself, I didn't have like that motivation. um
mm.
I was
Right.
uh you know, all alone. At one point I was in Canada. I was in a country, like, I couldn't really do much there, you know. I was just on visitor's visa and things like that. And so
Okay.
the funny thing is that that person says, even later on, they had said that was the best time for them in the marriage, you know. And for
Wow.
me, it was the lowest, like one of the lowest.
Mm,
But I knew that that was the best time because they had me completely trapped. You know, they're like,
mm,
this is a place where she can't work, she can't enroll in school. Like, you know, it's just like I was just visiting back and forth. And, um, you know, the person was in the process of getting a green card for America. And so during that time when they're in Canada, I was, you know, just visiting back and forth. But the whole time I was just stuck at home and I would have nothing to do. I also had like a miscarriage in 2017, which
mm,
that was hard to go through. And thankfully, I was with my parents, like, in Houston when that happened. So health wise, it just had a lot of complications.
mm.
So I didn't know how to process that emotionally until after I went
Right.
back to
Mm,
Canada, like when I got healthy enough to travel back. And when I went back, that was the deepest depression I ever felt. It
mm,
was just day in. I think I was only awake like maybe just a few hours. Like, I would just be able to get out of bed like around 2 o'clock. Before that, I was awake, but I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get out of bed. And it was such
mm,
a horrible place to be. And then I would just kind of get myself together a little bit until, you know, the person came home, and then that's it, eat dinner, and then go to sleep. And I was like,
mm.
again and again, it was like this cycle, like this
Right.
horrible, deep,
Mm,
dark hole. And I think afterwards, I was like, I blamed a lot of things, but I kept putting the blame away from the person abusing me.
mm,
Um, and I was like, oh, it's the circumstances, it's the financial stuff, it's this, it's that. And when those things slowly starting to get better, the person, you know, they got their green card. All of a sudden, we have a better apartment and all these things. And I thought, okay, now is the time. Maybe, you know, we can start a family. And like, I was starting to hope, and that hope got crushed like every
mm,
day. And that's when I knew, like, this isn't going to get better. And that you know, something drastic had to be done. Like, my life wasn't going to change much. I felt it when the outside things were changing, but I still was super depressed. I was still being verbally abused. Psychologically, there was a lot of abuse, which is like, I could talk a whole hour about that. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Go ahead. Yeah, because you see, that's the thing that when the way they play the game, the way
yes,
they manipulate the situation, there is so much confusion around it that you just don't really get to question it
mm-hmm.
because it's somehow, I don't know how, but it's somehow basically comes back to you. In the end of the day, you always are sitting by yourself
Mm-hmm.
thinking, what did I do wrong? What could I do
Right,
better to change the situation? Not just that, but actually you you become this person, this confused person who is so fearful that they're not even ready to reach out and
right,
ask somebody like, do you think this is normal? And like you said, and I've heard a couple of clients say that is that they were so fearful, like you said, even to go online and read, okay, what's going on here, because they knew something was seriously wrong, and because of already being exhausted and drained,
mm-hmm.
because their emotional needs were not met, they thought that they were just not ready to read on and understand what was going on. And like you said,
Yeah,
you just keep on going in a deeper, darker hole.
yeah,
And for some people, it can take years, many years, to just get out of the abuse, and then the recovery years are a different story
oh yeah,
altogether.
yeah,
So tell me, I want to just go back and ask
mm-hmm.
you. You said that things started to deteriorate as you were in the marriage, but then you got pregnant, and then
Mm-hmm.
but you had the miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when you said things started to deteriorate, what was happening slowly, slowly,
Mm-hmm.
that you felt that things were going down the drain as far as your relationship was concerned?
I think it started off with verbal. It
Okay.
started off with little comments, and I think like from the very beginning, it was kind of like the tone was established. For example, I always thought, and again, this person had shown me that they're very serious about their religion. They're very, the good, they're trying to be the good Muslim and everything like that. And so,
The good husband.
right, the good husband and all of
Hmm.
that. And then I got married and I saw like a different side, and it was very confusing because while they were very like pestering me about being a better Muslim, they would make comments like, "Oh," they would look at my phone like, "Oh, your friend is so pretty," or you know, things like
Hmm.
that. And then I
Hmm.
was like, but I thought, or they would make comments in a way that didn't seem like a good Muslim person would do that, because we
It
have
was very
certain,
subtle.
very subtle at first, and then
Mm-hmm.
even comparing me to other women just on the street, like, oh, look at that, look at her hair or something like that. And I was like, why do you have to make comments like that? Um, but for me, it was always like, sometimes I would just go out and literally the wind would blow and he would
Mm-hmm.
grab my scarf and be like, why are you showing yourself? And I said, I'm not. And it was like a constant mind game to the point where when I would go outside with this person, I would get scared. I would be like, is the wind gonna blow my scarf or something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is something, he always would find
You're
something.
walking on eggshells.
Yes, yes, they would always find
Mm.
something to like find a fault in me. I think one time I even said thank you to a person for opening the door, and they went off on me like in the car just about how terrible I was, about how I wasn't modest. They thought I was a different person, but I'm like a fake and all this stuff. So there was
Mm.
a lot of guilt tripping, and those things happened. The other thing that happened also was, and I felt like I needed to talk about this, especially for younger people, because we don't talk about this in our community, but intimacy
Yeah.
wise,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of abuse there. And it was hard for me to even acknowledge and like talk about that. Obviously, like now I'm at a point where I can recognize the things that happened, but that was from, from the very first day. You get married as a person, you know, most of us, like in our background, we're not allowed to talk to guys or anything. So it's like the first time I even held hands with a man, and all of a sudden in my case, they're forcing me to do things I wasn't comfortable with. And when I showed hesitancy or anything, it came to like he attacked me and my faith. And I thought, is this something really that's wrong with me? Like, am I doing something wrong? Am I supposed to feel like I have to like I have to do this for my husband, otherwise I'm a bad person, you know? And then they would threaten me with, if you don't do this, then, your husband would go, outside or wherever, and it would be like your fault, things like that. And, I have a hard time talking about this even now, but those were things that were really in the beginning, like from day one, day two, and I feel like I put it in the back of my mind, and I kept forgiving those things, and they just kept getting worse, and it was hard because those were things I did not talk about until after I got divorced,
Right.
and I
I
realized
think,
also, sorry, go
go
ahead.
on, sorry, go on.
No, I realized also that why a lot of people have a hard time talking about it, because I talked about it with some males, like some uh, sheikhs,
Right.
in our community, and they also did not understand. And that's the part that made it kind of hard. And there are some who do understand, but the females kind of understood it a little bit better. Or the older generation tends to also kind of like, oh, it's okay, that's how they
Yeah.
are, and so I feel like
Absolutely.
it's a conversation that needs to happen.
Absolutely. I think we were just talking about it the other day, you and me as well, that you when you're not married, all you've heard or all you're taught is that you have to keep your man happy in
Mm-hmm.
every way. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't do that, you're a bad wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hearing this narration for a very long time, that if you do not please your husband, or
Mm-hmm.
for God forbid, if he wants intimacy and you say no, the heavens, angels, or
Mm-hmm.
who's are going to curse you
Yeah.
for, I don't know, the whole night or something. So it was
Yeah.
horrific, and it was an emotional abuse, because now you're in bed, you're tired, you're exhausted, you're not in the mood. But God forbid, oh, God is going to be extremely angry if I said no.
Right.
And if I don't please him, then God is going to be angry. So the whole point of getting marriage is you have that intimate relationship. That's the only relationship you have.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's going to be like you're like just lying there and you're just so freaking scared
Mm-hmm.
of the whole thing that's happening, then what's the point, right? And
Exactly.
I'm totally on board with you that we need to have these conversations,
Yeah.
and open up and let girls know and understand, so that they know they're so vulnerable, and these men are not very vulnerable,
Yeah.
and they abuse you. And it's sad because, like you said, we are hushed away. We are said, we don't talk about it before
Mm-hmm.
marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Go in your room and stuff like that, because men get away with everything, right?
Yeah.
Not just that, but men are like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me also, it's been a challenge, moving back from USA to my country, Pakistan. It's been a challenge, because when I speak with an older generation way before me, 30-40 years gap, they think that, I mean, they don't even think, the way their body language and the way they're looking at me when I'm conversing is like, you asked for
Yeah.
it. You
Yeah.
ask for it,
Yes.
and nobody can make a house like that. Marriages are
Right.
not made like that. Women are supposed to sacrifice. And my
Right.
question is,
Right.
how much do we sacrifice, to an extent that one day you'll find us dead in that home? Would that make you
Right.
happy? Or
Right.
would you, probably you'll say on that dead body also, oh, why did she suffer? Why didn't she leave him? you
Right.
know
Right.
you
Exactly.
know so I literally, I was very vocal about this when I moved back with everybody. Like, what do you want from us, like, as women?
Mm-hmm.
That we're submissive, we put our head down, and we just go on, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it? Why? Because you did that, and guess what? You survived. You are so messed up when I talk to you. I'm sorry, with all due respect. But for me, I just see your anger, the way you converse with me. There is so much of hatred in your talk, shows
Mm-hmm.
that how broken you are from inside. You're just masking it because
Right.
you didn't have the courage. And there is no shaming. I don't shame. They
Right.
were different in living in different times. They didn't have that awareness. I respect and applaud these women,
Mm-hmm.
how they survived. But this needs to stop. This cycle
Right.
needs to be broken.
Right.
Women, and you and I both can say that our faith is the only first faith who came and liberated women.
Right.
We are not our men's property, okay?
Right.
We don't take their name, so we're not their
Mm-hmm.
property. We keep
Mm-hmm.
our name. So how in our faith or in our religion you can come and say, be a submissive wife? And one of the things for me I can say is, when I was in my darkest point, my thing, I mean, you know about my journey, and you followed me for a year. You know that I talk about my faith a lot.
Yeah.
So my thing was, I was hurt and damaged, and my thing was that I connected with God. I was blessed that God brought me to Him.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing was, what am I doing wrong? For the love of God, please tell me,
Yeah.
because I need to know and I need to fix that. And I know there was this moment of desperation, and God heard my prayer, and He put it in my heart. And I went from that day on saying, somehow, I don't know what happened, but something happened, and it came in my heart that I'm not going to be oppressed. Because guess what? One day I'm going to stand in front of God, and God is going to ask me, maybe, just maybe, He's going to ask me, did you have faith in me? Did you really have faith in me? Because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put you on this earth to be oppressed,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And I
Yeah.
didn't put you on this earth to be a slave to somebody. So, and that hit me hard, and I was like, you know what? If nobody wants to stand with me, doesn't matter. Everybody wants to leave me. Everybody wants to say I'm wrong. It's okay. As long as I am praying 5 times a day, I'm
Mm-hmm.
connecting with God, I'm being conscious of my choices, then God will open a path for me, because I'm holding to His rope, and He never leaves His people alone, especially people who are oppressed. So I think God heard my prayer when I was in desperation. He heard that every night I cried. I've never cried that much. So for so
Mm-hmm.
many years, you've
Mm-hmm.
cried, and God heard, and that is how He saved us. So I think that people need to know that faith has got nothing to do with it. It's just
Right.
the power and the control that they like. And it's sad that we still, in this century, we still live that. Not just
Right.
Muslim, but so many other women
Oh yeah.
suffer through that. Uh,
Yeah.
so you, Faria, you said that you, how did you handle your miscarriage? How was that because of the emotional abuse, or was that some other reasons,
Um,
or it was
you
just
know,
something natural? I think
I
because you were
feel,
under so much of trauma, it just,
yes,
yeah,
yes, I
you
do
couldn't.
feel very strongly that stress played a big role in
Mm-hmm.
that. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, there are like, and also I feel that, now looking back, that there's definitely wisdom behind why it happened, and I'm I'm it was a painful time, and obviously, like, when you experience your first pregnancy, you have like all these hopes and dreams and things, and how you're going to share that with your husband and everything. And it was a very, very painful time for me because um, one of the common themes in my marriage was that um, I would constantly come back home because, first there was the visa thing. I had to come back every 6 months. But then
Okay.
also there was like a thing of he needs space, so he needs space. So I would always kind of almost have to be like waiting to go back or something like that. But anyways, I was at my parents' house, um, and I was, I just found out I was pregnant and everything. So I'm going to these appointments. The first one, I took my mom with me, and we heard the heartbeat and everything. And I was so excited. And I would go home and, like, I would call or try to call,
Hmm.
when the communication was also, like, very, whenever it fit his schedule and stuff like that. But then when I would talk about it, it was like, oh, don't get so excited. What if something happens? Like, you know, why are you so arrogant? Are you trying to rub it in people's faces that you're pregnant? And I was like, no, this is just a normal part of people's life. They're allowed to be happy.
Happy.
And at this time, this person was also living with friend. They were kind of like moving about, and like I was like, what's happening? Like we're expecting a child. Like, I was very concerned also about how this person's going to handle like taking care of his family.
Hmm.
And so they moved, and like all these things were happening, and they would go to all these events like festivals and things like that, and come and talk to me and say, oh, are you going to become like one of those aunties? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, make sure you exercise, and don't let yourself go. All these women, they just have babies and they let themselves go, and like all these things constantly pestering me, and
Hmm.
saying, after the baby's born, it's still all about you and me. And I was like, not a single thing about him, him as a dad, him, like us as parents. I didn't feel a
The
unity,
connection.
a
Hmm.
connection, and I felt very alone in the pregnancy, and I felt very stressed because, thinking about raising a child and hearing these kind of things, like this is the partner I have to do it with. I
Hmm.
felt like I was already getting ready for this battle, you know. And so I was definitely stressed. I remember crying so much. Like, there were, I remember my brother and sister, they say, like, we never saw you cry as much as you did. And I used to hide, and then they would find me, and I would just be like so puffy in the face, and they were like, are you crying? And I was like,
Hmm.
no, everything's fine. Or, and then obviously they knew things were going
Hmm.
wrong. And so afterwards, when the miscarriage happened, it wasn't it literally was like natural, like the baby just stopped developing, and
Hmm.
then I had to get medicine because my body didn't naturally miscarry, so they had to like start a miscarriage with the pill. And so
Okay.
they said, and then I had a bad reaction to that and ended up
Hmm.
bleeding a lot, and I had to
Oh.
go to get the surgery to actually remove the baby, and then I had to get a blood transfusion. So all of that took like almost a whole month. um, and during that time, like, obviously my
Where was
parents,
he?
he was in Canada, I was in Texas.
No, I
And
meant where was he, as in was he present with you? Was he calling
emotionally,
and checking you, or no? What's going on? How are
I
you?
mean, I had no idea where he was because like my parents would call and things, but there wasn't a legitimate concern. I didn't feel like there was a legitimate concern or like a sadness on his part. He also just lost his child. You know,
Hmm.
the only thing I heard was, Alhamdulillah, everything happens for a reason. And I said, yes, everything happens for a reason, but
Hmm.
I'm allowed to feel pain. And it was almost like he was
Hmm.
relieved,
Absolutely.
and
Hmm.
I felt that. And it was all about like, well, just get better now. Whatever happened, happened. And, you know, just
Very
forget about it
cold.
now.
Just very
Very
cold.
cold, and,
Hmm.
very um, like
Not
I
interested.
felt right. And I felt like, I wasn't almost allowed to feel pain. it's a very painful thing to go through emotionally as well. And
Mm.
it was almost like, you're just, you should be grateful. You should be grateful
Mm.
for,
Right.
being alive and all these things. It was like that toxic positivity thing.
Right. We were talking about that too.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell me, when you had your when you miscarried, and then there was this laid back attitude from his side, and he wasn't checking in. Did your family, like your parents or your siblings, pick on that
Oh yeah.
from
Yeah.
his side? And did they say something to you? Like you said, they will catch you crying. Did they reach out and talk to you, like what's going on? Are you happy and stuff like that?
Yeah, they definitely felt that things were wrong, and my parents were upset. And I remember the day I was leaving the hospital after the surgery, my mom was like so angry at him because she
Mm.
saw how I was, and they were releasing me from the hospital, but I was still very, very sick because I didn't have enough blood. Um, and so just seeing me in pain, she was like she was so angry at him, and I just
Mm.
started crying. And because I knew what she was saying was right, but at the same time in that moment I was stupid. But also I will give myself some comfort that a girl who just lost a baby, she does kind of want her husband there,
Absolutely, yes,
and at
yes.
that time I wanted that feeling so badly of having that person be the one to comfort me, that when they
Mm.
were like angry with him and like you know all these things, I was like, oh, please stop saying things,
I can
I'm
totally understand.
just, yeah.
Mm.
And so when they would and so I did that for a long time actually in my marriage. My parents would say things that, for how how long are you gonna live like this, like are you happy and stuff, and they would see that I'm not, and I would say things like, let me try a little bit more, maybe things
Mm.
will get better. um, and so they were concerned, but at the same time, I
But
think they
like,
gave me that space.
but Faria,
Yeah.
that's a big thing. That your parents, you had their support, and they
Yes.
actually told you that this is wrong and you shouldn't
Yes.
carry on.
Yes.
And so I want to ask you, what were you thinking in those moments when you were saying, if you remember, you were saying, no, give me some time, maybe things were getting, why was that a cultural, unpsychological pressure in your back of the mind that, oh, I'm going to be divorced, I'm a Muslim, how things going to be? Or
Mhm.
was it something else that was making you say that, no, I want to try, let's see how things go?
I think, in the beginning, I would probably say a lot of stuff were probably like, upbringing, cultural. But as
Mm.
the relationship progressed, as marriage progressed, I got into a lot of my own issues, which is a fear of rejection, fear of being
Mm.
alone. And I didn't want that. I had become so codependent also on this
Mm.
person because I lost my identity. Like before marriage, I would go to school, my parents gave me that freedom to take care of my things. It was like an
Mm.
independent, more independent lifestyle. And I
Mm.
became super codependent. I didn't even know how to order a cup of coffee, like without getting nervous, because I
Mm.
felt like this person had to control it for me or do it for me. And
Mm.
so I
Trauma bond
became,
is, so
right.
your trauma bond was really
Yes,
tough.
yes, the trauma
Mm.
bond was really, really strong. And
Mm.
for me to even think, even though I knew how bad he treated me, it was like a cycle. Like right after the bad treatment was like all this love out of nowhere.
Mm.
And then the eggshells would start again, the little comments would start
Mm.
again. And then
Mm.
the like a big abuse would happen. So
Mm.
I was definitely, there was trauma bond, and I was almost like addicted to trying to make things
Please.
better and please.
Mm.
Like I remember even when I would visit my family, I couldn't enjoy my time there because I would constantly be looking at my phone, you know.
Mm. That's so
I would,
relatable.
yeah, I would
Yeah.
constantly, and if I wouldn't get a response right away or something, I would be like so anxious. Uh, did I do something or whatever? But there was a lot of my own issues at that point. I was
Mm.
very scared of being rejected.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. I actually did make a post about that. That I think that most of us stay in toxic or unhappy or abusive marriage, all of these,
Mhm.
because it's fear of being rejected, number one, fear of being judged,
Mhm.
fear of not being accepted back, and so many things. And it's like we are in our own way most of the time, because we build these self assumptions and we think that they are so real that life will go on without, if we were to think something different than that. So
Yes.
Faria, what was that moment that you said, okay, enough is enough, I'm done with this, I can't take it anymore?
Okay, so I really relate to what you said earlier about that moment of desperation, um, and asking myself, how long am I going to like accept this? It happened when this person got their green card, which is a whole other part.
Mm,
um, and we were struggling a lot financially in Canada, and finally we moved here, and we moved to where my parents were, and
okay.
we're like looking. There were actually a lot of opportunities there, but one of the things about a person who wants to, like, who's an abuser, is they like to isolate people. So even though there was a lot of opportunity and things like that in Houston, they wanted to move to a different state. So eventually we ended up moving. We got a apartment and things like that. The job was still, not happening. And then the moment they kind of got a link to a job, or something's about to happen, all of a sudden the discard phase was happening, where he was
Mm,
very much trying to get rid of me without actually saying divorce.
mm, mm,
Um so this part started happening where the littlest things set him off. And at this point, I was feeling like we should be in a place now where we should be excited. If you're
mm,
finally, after all these years of struggle, you're finally, if you're getting a job, you're finally thinking maybe we can settle down, start a family, like all these things. But all of a sudden, it was like the switch,
mm,
and the verbal abuse got really bad. um, I had almost become used to the other abuse, like,
mm,
which is
mm,
sad to say, but the verbal abuse really like hit me very strongly. And um, they were just like, and when you're depressed also, like, how you're saying people blame you. And so I
mm.
felt a lot of blame because I knew I was depressed, and because of that, because of the symptoms of depression, where you're not your best self, you're not
Right.
happy, you're not
Mm,
smiling and being able
mm,
to have this happy home, there was a lot of blame on me. You're
mm,
always, you don't know how to like take care of a home. You don't know how to like build a family, or like you're not a strong woman, like stuff like that. And so
mm,
I was already like feeling so low. And I remember there was that year, that Ramadan, I was making lots of like dua. I didn't know was
mhm.
what I was even wanting, but I just wanted
Right.
happiness. I felt like there was
Mm,
always a cloud over my head where I was just
mm,
sad all the time, no
mm,
matter what. And so I was just praying that, God, just give me happiness, like somehow, and I didn't think about divorce. I didn't think about any of that. And then one
mhm.
day, everything was fine. And suddenly this person got really, really upset over a little thing, like a text message I had sent to this group of, there's like a little WhatsApp group for the
Okay.
sisters in that community. And so we were new to the community, we moved to a new state. And so I was trying to make some friends
Right.
and things. And so I sent a message about a class that I wanted to get a ride or something to this event that was happening, if anyone could give me a ride. And they just blew up on that and said, how disrespectful and horrible are you that you wouldn't ask me before text, like before sending this text. And I
Mhm,
said, why do I have to show you before I sent a text message? It wasn't a wrong text message or anything like that.
mm.
I have my own freedom to even speak,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
to my own friends or community people. And when that spiraled into really bad, he sat me down and said, "Do you want to continue this marriage?" Or, a lot of really hurtful things were said at that point. Like some things I was actually, before talking to you, I was reading in my journal because sometimes I forget these things. Some
Right.
things are so
Yeah.
painful, you
Mm.
erase them. But I was reading
Mm.
my journal to see, and I actually wrote down all the things he had said. They were
Mm.
very hurtful, and at that point, I knew that emotionally, all of the things I had sacrificed, and I felt like I had love and
Mm.
compassion for this person so much that I was killing myself trying to love
Mm.
this person.
Mm.
And at that point, I was like, I don't think it'll ever be the same again. Even if
Mm.
we somehow repair or whatever, I don't think I'll ever feel the same way about this person again after what he has said.
Mm.
And that started like a couple of days of just like him completely ignoring me. He's doing his own things, very happy, and I was having full-blown panic attacks. I
Mm.
was emotionally probably one of the lowest points, and um, this is when I kind of finally opened up to my parents. I mean, they knew things were bad, but I opened up to them and I said, I can't do this anymore. And alhamdulillah, they were supportive. When they heard
Mm.
what happened and I was very honest about what happened, the same thing you said, that, oh God, just show me, what did I do wrong? I
Right.
asked
Right.
myself the same question and I couldn't
Mm.
find anything, because I was really good at finding things about myself, like, oh, I did that wrong, that's why, and I would
Right.
like
Right.
rationalize. But this one, I
Right.
couldn't find, what did I do so wrong
Mm.
that you had to treat me that badly?
That bad. Mm.
And I realized that I didn't do anything wrong and that I was
Mm.
being oppressed. And you know how
Mm.
you were saying, like you make a prayer like out of desperation, but it took me a long time to even admit that I was oppressed. So when I finally
Mm.
admitted, I was able to pray to God in a way that was like I had no like barrier. I was able to finally say that I was suffering at the
Mm.
hands of this person, not because of myself. You
Mm.
know, and that was the breaking point. And after that, I was really scared. I didn't know um, if how I would deal with the divorce. I didn't know if it was going to break me. But when I left, I knew I wasn't coming back. Like at that point,
Mm.
I knew I was going to go for a divorce
It's done.
before.
All right.
And I remember he was sleeping, and he would like punish me by sleeping separate.
Silent treatment.
Yeah, and like not
Mm.
talking to me at all and all of these things. And so I remember I was in the room, I was having kind of like a panic attack, and I think that I told my parents to stay on the phone, so because I was scared. I didn't
Mm.
even know what I was scared of. I just said, just stay
Yeah.
with me until I fall
Mm.
asleep. And then finally in the middle of the night, I kind of got up and I looked at this person. I looked at their face, and I knew in my mind, this is the last time. And so like
Mm.
that was like part of my, like, that heartbreaking moment. But I allowed myself to really feel it then. Like I allowed myself to get heartbroken in that moment,
Mm.
but I was like,
Mm.
but that's it. Like
Mm.
my heart is breaking right now over this person, but this is it. Like after that, I kind of the next day, my dad booked me a flight and I left, and the journey of recovery and all of that started.
Right, right, right. And you left quietly, right?
Yes, yeah.
Right, right. Uh, I just wanted to point out one thing for anybody who's listening right now, struggling,
Hmm.
and wanting to go back to the abuser. uh, this is something I've done, and I tell everybody is write everything down. Like she said, she journaled it. This is
Yeah.
so important when you write what they've done to you and moment of weakness. That's the moment of weakness, right? And when you have that moment of weakness, oh, I miss him. Oh, if he's okay.
Yes, yes,
Oh, I want to go back to him, but oh,
yes.
he doesn't take care of himself, or whatever that is in your head, which is
Hmm.
basically your trauma bond.
Yes.
Pick up that journal, open that journal, and read the trauma so that it
100%.
reminds you,
Yes.
it reminds you of what you were living, and that will stop you, and you'll remember the panic attacks, the
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, the loneliness, the feeling of fear and not knowing why you're fearful. Because there is so much uncertainty. You don't know whether if you walk like this, or it's going to put them off, or whether
Mm-hmm.
if your clothes are a little bit not in place, even in the house, it's going to put
Mm-hmm.
them off. Write that down, keep it somewhere that when you are in your weak moments, you can read out that to yourself and say, this is why I left, and this is why I need to stay strong on not getting in contact. No contact, no contact, no contact. They
Right.
will live, they've lived without you before you were married, they'll survive.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your thing to worry about them.
Yeah.
So you got divorced, your healing happened, and now are you healed?
I would say yes, and I'm still healing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Like I said to you that day when we
Yeah.
were talking, that once you embark on healing, there is no time frame. Healing is a journey, and healing actually becomes a lifestyle. Why?
Right.
Because you keep on healing, you keep on healing, you keep on learning something new about you. There's this trauma, you heal from it, but after a few years, you learn something new about the same trauma, and
Oh
then you
yeah.
tell yourself that you need to heal again. So it's a lifestyle. But you just keep on getting better. Once you say that today I'm gonna heal, I want to heal, guys, it gets better. That first step just leads you to a better life, a better you.
Yeah.
Freya, where are you right now? How's life? Are you single, struggling to find somebody? How's that going for you?
So right now I am married again. Alhamdulillah. So I'm married. I got married in July, July 4th, 2020.
Uh-huh.
So it hasn't been a full year yet, but we're going towards 1 year. And in my relationship, in my marriage, I am happy. Um, it was a journey to get here. Definitely, it was a very tough journey. There was a lot of ups and downs, but I think one thing you said that is really awesome is that the same way to break a trauma bond, it's so hard. I thought it would be impossible. Like honestly, I
Mm,
thought it would be impossible. But my healing really started when I was able to let go of the source of pain, which was
mm,
that person, and work on the relationship with myself. And that when I started working on that, it made it easier for me to find someone who would accept me for me, the authentic me, and love me for who
mm,
I am. And I would also be able to accept love for myself in a way that I
mm,
felt was, that I deserved.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I am happy now, but it's still a journey. Like you said, like, every day I'm learning something. The biggest blessing I feel like is that I have someone who supports me in that, but the
mm.
journey is my own.
Yes.
Um, but they are just there with me every step of the way, you know. Um, and definitely, after you experience heartbreak, after you experience something traumatic, it takes time to get used to something that isn't traumatic. But
Mm,
that does also help you in your healing journey because you see a contrast of things. You see,
mm,
now I understand what love is from a different angle.
mm,
Which my understanding of love was very different when I was younger.
mm.
So, and also, though we're expecting, so
Oh,
uh
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, so that's also like, how saying my first pregnancy was such a hard time. Now I
Mm,
can see a person that is with me on this journey, and it's
mm.
and all of these little things make me so grateful that I experienced something really bad, because now when the good is happening, I just like my heart just
Appreciate it more.
swells with appreciation.
Mm.
Yeah, like you just
Alhamdulillah.
feel it like on a
Mm,
different level.
mm,
Um, the littlest things will just make you so
mm,
happy. Just going to appointments with your husband will be
mm.
like you're on cloud nine, For
Right,
some people
right.
that's very normal. They expect that.
Mm,
But
mm,
for us who have experienced trauma, like it gives you a different perspective of life, and
right.
in a way
Do
that's
you,
a gift. Yeah.
Right. And do you have like, can you work? Can you be on your own? Can you hang out with friends and do things by yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's like also like so huge, and it
Mm,
took me a while to learn how to do things on my own again. Um,
mm,
and that was, I started learning again after I after the divorce, and I moved with my parents. I told them, I need to get a job or something, because, and I remember I was so scared to talk to my manager because he was a male, and I wasn't allowed
mm.
to talk through any mails or anything. And
Mhm.
so I remember um, those kind of things were so new to me, and still now I struggle. Like, sometimes I'm at the doctor's or something, and I just kind of stand behind my husband. He'll be like, "What are you doing? Go and talk," And then I
Right.
realized that, oh, I need to get out of that.
Right.
And so, like you said,
Right.
it's a constant thing where
Mm,
you realize you had like the system of being, that
mm.
that is not good. That was unhealthy.
Right.
And so
Hmm.
I'm constantly learning, but like I do, like you said, for people who are going through a divorce, believe me, I was so scared of
Mm,
being alone, being how am I gonna like survive on my own, or am I like, am I gonna get weird or broken, or like become
mm,
constantly depressed after
mm,
um,
mm,
a divorce? I would say even before my current marriage, alhamdulillah, I was happy again. And I think
mm,
that's why I was able, um, that's why I was, alhamdulillah, able to find a good marriage after, because I was happy again.
mm,
Even on your own, you can be
mm.
happy. And
Right.
sometimes it's
Absolutely.
totally better to be on your own and be happy and not constantly abused. You're still going to struggle. You're still going to
Mm,
work on those
mm,
days, and on certain nights you're going to feel broken, but
mm.
you don't have somebody stomping on you constantly.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes, yes. Faria, just one last question and we'll wrap up.
Yes.
You did talk about being severely depressed, and
Yeah.
depression was one of major issues in your relation. Did you heal through medication? Did you take any medication, or was that through faith, or did you try something else? How did you heal?
I think,
Well,
um,
getting away from the relationship, I think, does most of the healing, but
yeah,
it takes you out of that depression. But
yeah.
still, just for the audience who are listening.
Yeah, the depression was severe, and like,
Mm.
um, I would say, it even got
Did you
to
take
points
medication?
where, no, I did not take medication, but I tried because
Okay.
inside that previous marriage, they were also not going to help me get medication or anything. So I would do
Mm.
research on, the little mood boosting pills and things like that, like things that weren't
Okay.
prescription, but things that would help me, vitamin D's, like what would
Right.
increase my
Yeah.
serotonin levels, like things like that.
Mm.
I was trying to do research on how I can get better.
Mm.
But like you said, sometimes the situation you're in is so made for you to feel
Mm.
depressed. I was even having suicidal thoughts,
Mm.
um, and that's when I knew I have to change something.
Mm.
And so, I was taking those pills and things like that, which were just like serotonin boosting, things like that,
Right.
nothing
Right. Right. Right.
prescription. But
Right.
then I did go to therapy
Okay.
afterwards. So I went to therapy afterwards, and they didn't prescribe me with anything. But I think for me, talking through it
The
helped me a
talking
lot.
therapy. Mm.
Yes, for me, it was like that. But also, I had to change certain lifestyle habits. I had to force myself to get out of bed. There were
Mm.
days I just did not. And that was one of the struggles for me, is like I would stay in this darkness, like,
Mm.
and because I just didn't see light in my life. And so,
Mm.
um, I had to, that's why I got into a job. I was like, at least I'll get out and be driving in the morning. I'll get
Mm.
that morning sun on me. And so
Mm.
it was like a process, but slowly through little life changes. And then I would do one little thing that makes you feel good. If it's um, you like getting a coffee in the morning, go out and get yourself a coffee.
Mm.
Little things like that.
Mm.
So little life changes helped me get out of the
Okay.
depression. And now I would say I have mild depression, where I
Mm.
like. which is triggered
Well,
by
right now you have
certain
it because your
things.
hormones are everywhere, mostly
Right.
because of the pregnancy, which is probably
Yeah.
just very normal.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to hear that you coped with it naturally, and like you said that it actually you can't. They say you can't heal on a place where you were broken. So getting away from it actually did give you that boost to get get your
Yes.
healing process going on.
Yes.
Uh, before we conclude, I first
Hmm.
want to thank you for coming forward, sharing your story. It was really inspiring. I was so excited
Thank you.
because we hear a lot of survivor stories, but your story was different because it had hope. You found the right person. You're happily
Mhm.
married, and I wanted to give and to share that hope with so many women right now who are
Yeah.
struggling, who are thinking that there is no good man out there, or there are no good men, and they will never find their Mr.
Yeah.
Right or
Yeah.
whatever soulmate. Uh, and that is why I really want you to come and show that no, it does happen. And we have an
So,
example, a survivor who's lived it and now is living the best life ever. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing so much. Thank you for
thank you.
giving really great detail about your personal journey. Fariha, your final message to women, men, anybody who's being emotionally abused and second guessing themselves, feeling stuck. What message do you want to give them?
I think my message would be the thing that kind of stops us from healing is fear. And for me, that was one of the biggest things, fear of what's to come, fear of so many things. And the opposite of fear is really hope. And I think even in my lowest low moments, somewhere inside of me, I had some hope.
I lost you for a second. You are still breaking up. No, I can't hear you. I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you. No, can't hear you. Did you mute it? Nope. Why don't you go off and I'll bring you back on and then we can get your message. Okay, there we go. Guys, we're just concluding. She's gonna share her final thoughts and we'll. There she is.
Okay. Can you hear
I
me
can hear
now?
you.
Okay.
Yes. And
Um, okay, so final message, I would just say, even when it's hard, stay hopeful, not and don't keep your hope in people.
I lost that. Okay, you're back.
Hello?
Yeah?
Okay, okay, awesome, awesome.
What are you
Okay,
doing?
so I don't know, I think I'm getting calls and that's why.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
man. But
Mm,
yeah, just stay hopeful in yourself. This it starts with you,
mhm,
and you are so much stronger than you even know. And
mhm.
it sounds kind of cliche, but it's very, very true. And when we go through some of the hardest times in our lives, that's when like the majority of our strength just somehow comes up, and we
Yep.
even surprise ourselves that I can't believe I went through that. I can't believe you know, I am strong, you know.
Yeah.
And so that is your biggest weapon, and that's going
Mhm,
to take you so far, and you're going to end
mhm.
up doing whatever you want in life, whether that's to have a family, whether that's to grow in your career, or whatever the life that you want to live, you will be able to do it. But it's going to all start with you. And when you repair that relationship you have with yourself, it will happen.
Yes, absolutely. Somebody's asking, yes, this podcast will be shared and will be on my Instagram forever as long as Instagram doesn't take it off. So don't worry about that, guys. We are going to wrap up. I think it was a very deep conversation with her. We've learned so much from her, yet she's given us hope. And like she said, There is hope always. Never give up on yourself. I always tell my clients, and I always tell anybody who reaches out to me, you are not weak. No
Mm-mm.
way. The abuse you survive, only a strong person, a resilient person can do that. No other person. So never think you're weak because your strengths are not showing up. You are strong. You've got this. Don't shame yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like she said, don't reach out to people. Maybe a lot of them, mostly a lot of them, are not going to stand your journey.
You're
Just
right.
have faith in yourself. If you
Yes.
believe in God, connect with God. God is the biggest strength. He's going to give you the biggest strength. But believe in yourself, because when you believe in yourself, then really you create miracles. There was a time she thought it was never going to end. I thought,
Mhm.
many of us thought, this is going to be like this forever, and there was no hope.
Right.
But there always hope. You're here. That is why I have this podcast, to let you hear so many survivor stories, so you know there is always hope. Don't beat yourself if you're feeling stuck right now, but you know the right thing to do is walk away. You will do that. I'm sending you all so much love. Thank you so much, Freya. I wish you the best of luck for your new life and the little baby that's on its way.
Thank you
Take
so
good care of
much.
yourself. We will definitely stay connected.
Yes.
And guys, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to ask for help, because you will receive it. On that note, we are out. Thank you so much. Lots of love to you, Faria.
Oh,
Take
thank
care,
you.
everyone.
No,
Bye
thank you.
bye.
Bye, everyone.